Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day so far. And today we are starting a new series of Immortal Games. And yes, I'm going to continue the Lost in History series also, but it just clicked me that the Lost in History is just opposite of the Immortal Games. So why not start both of them? So Lost in History, we are covering the game which are as good as Immortals, but they are very less known. And the Immortal games are obviously the games which received a lot of fame and they are known to be very beautiful in nature. Alright, so we are starting with, of course, the very first Immortal game, very first Immortal known game. So it's a game between Adolf Anderssen versus Leonel Kiritsky, and sorry about the pronunciation. I have no idea how to pronounce that name. It was played in 1851 in London, and we have a very nice King's Gambit game. So you'll love this game. Okay. So e4 by Adolf and e5 by Leonel and f4 the King's Gambit as promised. E takes f4, so the King's Gambit accepted, and my favorite variation of King's Gambit, Bishop c4. The idea of Bishop c4 is you are directly attacking the pawn on f7. It is much better than knight to f3 in my opinion, because if black plays g5, then after bishop c4 you are basically forced to give up the knight after pawn to g4. And of course there are many beautiful games on that position also, but yeah, I personally find bishop c4 to be a better move. Okay, queen to h4 check. Nowadays knight c6 is considered better move because it's just safer. You just develop both knights and give up the pawn on f4 back and just play the position. But yeah, that time if the challenge is thrown at you, you're going to accept it. Those are the type of players these masters were. So queen to h4 check, the most obvious idea, because you didn't play knight to f3 to stop queen h4 check, and you are very much forced to play king to f1. King to e2 is another move. Some player have played this, and of course you don't play g3 because after f takes you cannot recapture because the rook hangs, and otherwise pawn to g2 will be a check, and it will be another queen for black, so that will be completely lost. So king to f1, and here black plays something called Leonel Gambit, which is named after Leonel, the player from black side. Actually, he played this gambit 5 times before, and he has a very successful time playing this gambit. He actually won a game against none other than the Adolf Anderssen, who is white right now, and he actually had a very good score until this game, of course. So b5 again. The idea is very simple. Just after bishop takes b5, you sacrifice the pawn, but this bishop is no longer attacking the f7 pawn. So you gave up a pawn just for the activity. Okay, knight to f6. Now developing like nothing happened after you sacrificed a pawn. And knight to f3, attacking the queen first. Okay, queen to h6, going back. And pawn to d3, defending this pawn because knight takes e4 was kind of a threat. And bishop takes f, bishop is opened up, so you will have some pressure on this pawn. If the f4 pawn hangs, let's say if white able to take the f4 pawn, then white's opening is completely successful. Alright, knight to h5. Okay, so the direct threat is knight g3 check, and let's say if you play something like knight to c3, then knight g3 check, and if you play let's say king to e2, then after knight takes h1 you are just down an exchange, or if you take the knight, then queen takes h1 and you're down too much material again. Surprisingly, I mean, as surprising as it gets, king after king to g1, knight takes h1, and knight to d5. Surprisingly, engine says that it is completely winning for white already, and I'm having a hard time just thinking about like how it can be better for white. Like, okay, yeah, you got a huge attack, but you just gave up a rook on the corner. But okay, that's chess, and that's actually a novelty. So you can try this position after knight c3, knight g3, and play your own immortal game. Okay, but in our game, knight to h4 is played. The idea is If you play knight g3, then after h3 there is no rook hanging because there is a knight in between the queen and the rook. Okay, so in the game, queen to g5 played, one of the best moves. Knight to f5 and pawn to c6. So attacking the bishop right now. The idea is if you move the bishop, let's say to c4, then after pawn to g6, and well, you move something and black is play pawn to d5 and black is back in the game. And here Mr. Adolf came up with a very beautiful resource and played pawn to g4. Actually very dubious move, but I would say any player who sees knight to f6 with a double attack would play knight to f6 in this position. Like, why would you not play knight to f6? And that's what played in the game, which is a mistake. After g4, the best move would be to not take the bishop, to not play knight to f6, but to hang the third piece by playing pawn to g6. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty inhuman. Okay, so after g4 in our game, knight to f6 and with a double attack. If you play bishop to c4 now, then after knight takes g4, black is completely better in this position. Your king is too exposed, and something like knight e3 check can always trade down more pieces. So it is pretty much better for black. But here Adolf Anderssen had a very beautiful idea in mind, and he sacrificed this bishop on b5 and played rook to g1 with a very nice idea. Okay, c takes b5. So as I said, whenever you throw a challenge at these masters, they are going to accept the challenge, no matter what. And pawn to h4. And suddenly this queen is having some trouble. Queen to g6 is the only square. Pawn to h5. Queen to g5. And, well, queen to f3. And if bishop takes f4 lengths, that means your queen is trapped here. Because you cannot go here because knight covers that, of course. So, well, black's next move makes a lot of sense to me. Played knight to g8 with the idea of getting the queen back, opening this diagonal, and also freeing the f6 square. So bishop takes f4 played with the attack on the queen. Queen f6, counter-attacking the pawn on b2, and knight to c3. Simply developing and defending the pawn, interposing the knight in between the queen and the pawn. Keep in mind, white has sacrificed a piece just 3 moves ago. So white is just developing like nothing happened. But that's the beauty of this position. Okay. In the game, bishop to c5 played with the attack on the rook. And if you know anything about the old masters, you know that the rook is something which is very least favorite of these masters. They are going to save the minor pieces if it's the middle game and they want to attack. So Adolf played knight to d5, attacking the queen, leaving the rook hanging because, well, the queen is much more powerful piece. And okay, so next move which Leonel played is the best move of the computer, and that is queen takes b2, and suddenly this rook is hanging, this rook is hanging, and it is very unclear what your next move should be. Now, according to engines, they find the inhuman resources. Rook e1 is the best move and give up this rook on g1 to save the e1 rook. But engines are angels. At that time in 1851, Adolf Anderssen came up with this beautiful idea and he played bishop to d6, sacrificing a rook, this one, and seemingly giving up both pieces with check. So black took the rook, queen takes a1 check, and king to e2, attacking the queen with the rook. And yeah, actually this was not played in the game. Queen takes a1 is a variation after king to e2, and let's say queen takes g1, you are getting checkmated after knight takes g7 check, and there is knight in 1 with bishop c7. So queen takes a1 was not played in the game. Bishop takes g1 was played in the game, which is seemingly a blunder. because now again white can play rook to e1 according to engines, but the main idea which Adolf Anderssen had in mind was pawn to e1. A very beautiful move, sacrificing a rook again and cutting the, just putting the pawn here so the queen cannot defend this pawn because there is a pawn, my pawn, in between your defense. And now knight into g7 will land, and that will be checkmate very soon. Okay, queen takes a1 check. Okay, king to e2. The only move in this position would have been bishop to a6, while in that position knight c7 check, king d8, and let's say knight takes a6 because that rook is not going anywhere, and that rook will fall next move. So whatever you play, let's say queen to c3. This is, by the way, absolute best moves recommended by the engine, bishop c7. And in this position, well, engine says you have to give up the queen, because if you play king to e8, then knight d6 check, and king e7, queen f7 is made. So yeah, after bishop c7, you are forced to give up the queen, and then the rook on h8 also falls. So that's just winning for white. So it is winning for white. But bishop a6 is still the best move. So knight c7 check was one other threat. So black played knight to a6 to defend against knight to c7 check. Makes sense. But there is mate in 3 in this position too. So try to pause the video and try to solve this beautiful mate in 3. Okay. So the move Anderssen played is, first one is very obvious. Knight takes g7. That's your idea, of course, after pawn to e5 to cut the connection of the queen. And well, the king cannot go here because of the bishop, and cannot go here because of their own pawns. So the only other square is king to d8, and this is the move you have to find when you saw this position. Queen to f6 check. A beautiful queen sacrifice just to deflect this knight from the g8 square. And the only move in this position is to take the queen, and here comes mate in 1 with bishop to e7, checkmate. Because this knight covers the c7 square, this knight covers the e8 square, this knight defends the bishop, and these two pieces of their own, black's own pieces, are in the way of the king's escape. And that's mate. And this is what happened in the game. So bishop to e7 mate was delivered by Adolf Anderssen. So just look at this position. White got 3 pieces only, and all 3 of them are hunting the king, while black got the extra queen, the extra bishop, I think 2 extra rooks also, and none of them are participating at all in this position. Even this bishop is like non-existing piece, and everything is just not doing anything. So while black was hunting pieces, white hunt the king, as they say. So yeah, that's the first Immortal game ever played, and it is called Immortal for a very good reason. 2 rook and a queen sacrifice and a bishop sacrifice in the opening by Adolf Anderssen. And what a beautiful idea, what a beautiful game. So it all starts with this bishop sacrifice, followed by this, well, this pawn sacrifice, then this rook sacrifice, then another rook sacrifice, for this beautiful queen sacrifice, and a mate. Alright, so that's the game. I hope you like this game and like this video, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.